A biting wind swept through the city park as the sun dipped behind gray buildings, casting long shadows over empty paths. Daniel, barely in his 30s but aged by hardship, sat hunched on a weathered bench. A thin, tattered blanket clung to his shoulders, offering little protection from the cold that settled into his bones. His face, once full of life, was now drawn and pale. His beard was unkempt, his fingers stiff from the cold, twitching slightly as he held a small cardboard sign, "Just trying to survive. Anything helps." His eyes, tired and hollow, scanned the passers-by, businessmen glued to their phones, joggers in warm gear, couples laughing without noticing him. No one made eye contact. No one slowed down. A little girl tugged at her mother's coat, pointing at him. The mother quickly pulled her away. Daniel looked down, embarrassed, as if his very presence was something to be ashamed of. His stomach growled, a dull pain he'd grown used to. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, half a granola bar someone had tossed his way. He thought about the life he had before all this. A job, a place to sleep, a name people said with respect. Now, he was invisible. He tucked the sign back under his feet as another gust of wind hit him. He closed his eyes tightly, willing the tears not to fall, not here, not now. Then, in the fading light, he whispered to himself, just one more night. Just hold on. But even he didn't believe it anymore. The world moved on around him. He remained still, a man lost in the open, seen by no one. The next morning brought little warmth. The sun peeked through bare tree branches, but the chill still clung to everything. Daniel sat slouched on the same bench, his blanket damp from the night's mist. He rubbed his hands together, trying to coax some feeling back into his fingers. Footsteps approached. He didn't look up. People walked by all the time. They never stopped. But these footsteps slowed, then stopped. A pair of worn but clean sneakers stood in front of him. Daniel glanced up. A woman, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle face, stood holding 2 cups of coffee and a small paper bag. "I thought you could use something warm," she said softly, offering one of the cups. Daniel blinked, unsure. "You, talking to me?" She smiled. "Yes, you looked cold, and hungry." He hesitated, then took the coffee with both hands. It burned a little, but the heat was welcome. Real, comforting. "I'm Claire," she said, sitting beside him on the bench like it was the most normal thing in the world. He stiffened. People didn't sit next to him. They crossed the street to avoid him. "I'm Daniel," he said quietly, ashamed to say his own name. They sat in silence for a while, sipping. Then she asked, "How long have you been out here?" He stared ahead. "Too long." Claire didn't press. She just nodded. Her presence calm, patient. No pity, no judgment, just kindness. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt something crack inside him, not from pain, but relief. Someone saw him, not the dirt, not the blanket. Him, and somehow, that felt like hope. Claire stood, brushing crumbs from her lap, then looked down at Daniel with a thoughtful expression. "I don't want to push," she said gently, "but, would you let me help you beyond this coffee?" Daniel stiffened again. He'd heard this before, empty promises, quick sympathy that faded with the wind. He didn't answer right away. Claire continued, her voice soft but steady. "I volunteer at a shelter a few blocks from here. It's not perfect, but it's warm. Clean. They have counselors, even job programs. I could take you. Just think about it." Daniel stared at the pavement. The offer felt too big. Too good. He didn't trust good anymore. Not after being ignored, stepped over, forgotten. He mumbled, "I'm not a project. I don't want anyone fixing me." Claire nodded. "That's fair, and I'm not here to fix you. I'm just offering a hand. You get to decide if you take it." Her tone was so sincere, so human, that it disarmed him. He looked up at her, really looked. She wasn't some wealthy savior. Her coat was old, her hands calloused, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone who'd seen her share of hard days too. He exhaled. "Okay," he said quietly. "Just don't expect too much." Claire smiled. "I don't expect anything. Just glad you said yes." She walked him to her car. As he opened the door, a strange feeling stirred in his chest, not fear, not shame. Something unfamiliar. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was the first step back to life. The shelter smelled of warm food and fresh soap, a strange comfort after weeks on the streets. Daniel hadn't slept indoors in months, and the quiet hum of conversation, the sound of water running in the distance, felt almost surreal. Weeks had passed since Claire first brought him here. Now, he stood in the small kitchen, wearing a donated t-shirt, clean jeans, and a brand new pair of sneakers someone had gifted him after his second week. He looked down at them often. They weren't anything fancy, just plain white runners, but to him, they were proof. Proof that he mattered, that he had moved forward, even if just a few steps. He ladled soup into a bowl, handed it across the counter to a thin, shivering young man who couldn't look him in the eye. Daniel paused, then smiled softly and added a second piece of bread to the tray. "You need anything else?" he asked gently. The young man barely whispered "thank you," before walking away. Daniel watched him go, remembering exactly how that felt, to be too ashamed to speak. He turned back to the next person in line. "Hey there," he said, "coffee's fresh." The old Daniel, the one on the bench, wouldn't have believed this moment was possible. That he could be useful again. That he'd be part of something. But here he was, serving food with purpose, talking to people who saw him as more than a statistic, rebuilding something inside himself that he thought was gone forever. Behind him, one of the staff members patted his back. "You're doing good work, Daniel." He nodded, smiling. "Feels good to be needed." And for the first time in years, he meant it. The apartment wasn't much, just a small studio on the third floor, with creaky floors and mismatched furniture. But to Daniel, it felt like a palace. Sunlight poured through the window, warming the room as he unpacked a small box of belongings, a toothbrush, a second-hand book, a folded letter from the shelter's director offering him a part-time job as a community liaison. But the last item he placed on the shelf above his bed made him pause. It was a framed photo. Him and Claire, standing outside the shelter on the day he got his apartment keys. She had one arm around him and the biggest, proudest smile on her face. He smiled back at the memory. He remembered what she told him that day. "This isn't charity, Daniel. This is a beginning. And you earned it." He sat down slowly, glancing around his space, the ticking wall clock, the microwave that worked when you hit the side, the mattress on the floor with clean sheets. His phone buzzed. A text from the shelter. "Can you help with intake tomorrow? We've got 3 new arrivals." He replied, "Absolutely." Because now, he wasn't just surviving, he was reaching back. Offering the same kindness that once saved him. Voiceover narration. Sometimes, it only takes one stranger to change everything. Not with money, but with presence, with kindness, with belief. Claire didn't rescue me. She reminded me I was still worth saving. And now, I carry that light forward. He placed the frame back on the shelf, stood tall, and walked out the door, ready to give hope where it was needed most.